LaMalfa from California.
I thank Mr. Westerman and his work in the Natural Resources Committee, where I was for several years, as well as working with the Western Caucus on this as well. And so obviously it's been underlined during this time tonight that we are in a severe drought situation. The darker the color on the map, the more severe that area is. So my part of California is that portion right here at the border here, Oregon in that corner. So you see the dark brown is the Klamath Basin. My colleague Cliff Bentz spoke about that a little bit either on how dire that situation is. But you see all over the map here, okay, that the whole West, much of it is in that brown color, as well as the called exceptional drought. As well, the orange area is called extreme drought. So what do we do about these situations? We be proactive. In California, and I'll talk a lot about California, but that is of interest to the whole country, because so much of the crops that so many people in this country use come from California. So we've had leadership in the past that produced the federal water project known as the Central Valley Project and the state water project that California did. Two of the biggest dams there, 4.5 and 3.5 million acres by themselves, acre feet. Now an acre foot is 326,000 gallons. An acre foot is enough to take care of 2 households or approximately 10 people for a year. And so we used to build these projects because we were forward thinkers then. And that water benefited so many of us. But when we talk about the drought situation, it also affects not just people and food supply and the water supply, but also, as my colleague and I, Mr. Bentz, we share that area on the Oregon border, where the Klamath Basin is. So what does that mean for wildlife? Well, we don't keep track of our water supply. We don't put it where it's the most beneficial. You get a situation like this. This is a refuge for ducks and other waterfowl that is going to be dry this year. Last year I was up there on a trip that during the year they had the deaths of 60,000 ducks and other waterfowl, and it's due to botulism because the water's so low and it gets that disease in there and wipes out the flock, which affects the whole Pacific Flyway. So this isn't just about farms and food and money and this and that. This is also about habitat. But the only habitat you hear about in California is such that might help the fish, the salmon, or the suckerfish in the Klamath Lake. The suckerfish do not sustain themselves by a full lake on that lake. Indeed, it needs to be lower. And they've been trying to run water down the Klamath River in order to wipe out a virus, a kind of a mold, by keeping it wet in order to help the salmon. And we see this also in the delta that flows through the Bay Area from those great watering sources that come through the Sacramento Valley and the San Joaquin Valley. They're wasting so much water running through there to try and help the delta smelt. So much water's gone, and the smelt, when they do a survey, they can't even find any anymore with the extra water that's been run through there for 30 years. So what are we going to do? Why does this matter to all Americans? Well, certain crops, 99% come from California. 99%, such as almonds, artichokes, celery, figs, garlic, raisins, kiwi, honeydew, nectarines, olives, cling peaches, pistachios, plums, sweet rice, and walnuts. You're not going to find those easily imported from somewhere else, or at least of the quality that Americans are used to, if we don't put our water situation in the state of California, either due to environmental and regulatory concerns or building more storage. We should be doing both. We need to be fixing these regulatory problems because the Endangered Species Act has been weaponized against things that work for people. We need to pause for a minute and see, are these things that we're doing even helping environmentally, even helping the fish populations? And they're not. This year, when the lakes finally run out, in 2022, all bets are off because Lake Oroville's so low, Lake Shasta's pretty low. We won't have the water supply. You can forget agriculture. We know that they will. Agriculture seems to be the last in line for anything in California. But the urban areas are going to run out before too long. Can you imagine trucking water into the urban areas? Can you imagine trying to set up temporary desal plants along LA? They've been trying to build a desal plant in Huntington Beach for 20 years. And environmental groups put the brakes on that all the time. It's amazing They're cutting their own throat. So when are we going to get focused on what works for people in their food supply and the domestic wells? Hundreds, thousands of domestic wells are going dry around California. And we haven't even seen the full effect of this year when many thousands more will go dry. What do you do for those folks? You know, hey, forget agriculture. It isn't important. We'll just import the food. Like imported oil was so great and imported electricity. No, we have to be thinking a lot more because the environmental movement has decimated this. We talk about forestry for a moment. All those overcrowded forests create their own drought, and they also don't let the water supply that would normally come down through the system and hit our lakes. It doesn't get there anymore because we have an inventory of 10 to 1 what we should be having in our forests. So we got a lot of work to do. We have to reform the Endangered Species Act. We have to reform the NEPA process to be able to get projects done and still take into account what we can do positively for the environment. We'll still do that. Fish benefit from dams, yet all you hear about is tearing the dams out, whether it's up in Washington for Mr. Newhouse or in my district and Mr. Bentz's district. That seems to be the big push. Where are we going to get this water supply? How are we going to have water for fish in order to have the fish go down, have it go down the stream for the fish each year when you don't have the dam there because it's all gone in a short amount of time after the rain stops? We got to get our heads back together on how things really work. We're not going to have a food supply. We're not going to have a timber supply because it's all burning right now until we get past having the Endangered Species Act, the environmental organizations rule what we do in this country. So we got to get serious. And I appreciate the time.